It is not certain whether there can be a history of morphology. Understood as preoccupation with Urphenomena, immutable Urtypes, such as Goethe's Urpflanze, morphology is concerned with patterns or structures that occur and unfold in time, but that are not themselves subject to time. To be sure, Platonic ideas are also immutable fixtures, but this does not keep them from being subjected to historiographies told and retold by intellectual historians. However, Goethe's morphology is not an idea, Platonic or otherwise, but a research practice. And histories of research practices are the domain of history of science. And indeed, the history of morphology in the natural sciences has frequently been told, and it usually includes a chapter or more on Goethe's morphology, as a dead end along the course of science from Buffon and Cuvier to Darwin. Yet Goethe's morphology is also not exhausted by its account as a scientific or pseudoscientific practice. Even though his notebooks on morphology, the most extensive published record of Goethe's morphological adventures, restrict themselves largely to the problem of formation and transformation of organisms, Goethe stressed repeatedly that morphology also found application in the social sphere and in history. Such remarks suggest that morphology is a theory of form, formation, and transformation in a more generic, encompassing sense that transcends the existing disciplinary logic of historicizing various objects. In fact, Goethe's morphology grapples with an operation that is crucial for any history whatsoever. How can what drifts in the amorphous flow of time be rendered into at least temporarily stable form or a recognizable pattern? We are generally today quick to point out that historiography of any sort requires and is at bottom narrative. In the 20th century, Hayden White's study, Meta-History, has certainly hammered that point home. Albrecht Kuschorke, more recently, has demonstrated the enormous reach of such an approach. Even though the perhaps all too obvious link between narrative and history, sedimented particularly agrariously in the double meaning of the German word Geschichte, goes back to antiquity, it remains a question and perhaps even a riddle how a historiographer can proceed from, as it were, fact to fiction, from an amorphous and potentially infinite sequence of events to a pattern and then onto an interpreting narrative. What happens on the way? Obviously, before there can be a historical story of anything, a historical object or element has to be defined, isolated, selected, named, arrested, constituted, constructed, and in this sense, it has to be given form, it has to be shaped. In his research on organisms, Goethe found this maneuver to be an enormous challenge, for in nature, he found nothing fixed and permanent, but encountered only continuous shape-shifting. Forms melt into other forms, and the transitions in that process elude perception as well as discursive and intellectual fixation. Hence, Goethe concluded that it was necessary to surrender the illusion of an unmoved or unabsolved observer perspective. The scientist was an integral part of the very life processes to be described and analyzed in morphology. This is why Goethe demanded from the subject to comport itself as pliable and dynamic as the objects under consideration. But how was that to be accomplished without falling prey to subjectivism? Under these circumstances, method, in the Cartesian sense, had little to offer. In a brilliant study, Eckhard Förster has recently argued that Goethe actually developed his own method for intuitive understanding, which Spinoza had suggested as possible but did not explore. From my perspective, and contrary to Eckhard Förster, Goethe did not develop any such method at all. In fact, he didn't even have a method. He proved to be generous to the point of carelessness when it came to the philosophical questions looming large at the horizon of the sciences of his time. Above all, the Kantian question whether understanding and sense perception can have a common root, or whether the world of the subject and its freedom had to remain forever separated from the realm of objects and necessity.